So yeah, that's the recording in progress. There may be some more people coming now onto Zoom, but I will make a start. Yeah, so the project, as Rachel said, funding from UK Shared Prosperity Fund enabled us to carry out this project as sorry, just there we are. Yeah. So the wider project, which we've been calling internally as the Nature Recovery or Biodiversity Toolkit, but the project essentially entailed the production of a guide, which I have got here, a community nature recovery guide, and also three case studies as well, with funding for three capital works for the three case studies, which I will introduce you to a bit later on in the presentation. So I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is a bit more of a setting the scene for nature recovery. So what is nature recovery? What are we trying to get back to? Here I have a lovely painting from around the mid 19th century of wildflowers in the corner of a cornfield. And as you can see, it doesn't look that tidy. And you can also see there's a dragonfly, I think that's an emperor dragonfly over the top there, and a lovely jumble of wildflowers. So what are we trying to get back to? I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Nature Recovery Network, the ecological network of wildlife rich spaces, which is a national network. And this has been introduced as part of the Environment Act 2021, what it set out, the legally binding targets for the natural environment. And this strengthens the biodiversity duty on public bodies, which is part of the NERC Act. And many of you would have heard of the State of Nature report. I've got some figures down the bottom for the State of Nature report 2023. And as many of you will know, we require urgent action to reverse this decline, loss of plants, insects, and other creatures on which we all depend. And many of you will also know that a State of Nature report in Oxfordshire was produced in 2017. And this is still the most comprehensive review of Oxfordshire's wildlife, and it provides vital baseline data. There is a full report and a summary on the Wild Oxfordshire website, if any of you haven't seen that or want to have a look at that. The summary report has some really good infographics in it, and obviously the longer report it's a PDF, and you can have a look at that as well. And yeah, that's much more detailed as you would expect. So going to the next one, and this sets out the project aims of our biodiversity toolkit. So as I've explained, to produce a nature recovery guide, which is focused towards communities, parish and town councils, but it could just anyone who's interested and wants to find out more. I've explained about the capital works funding for 3 parish councils for nature recovery projects. As part of that, we wrote up 3 case studies to supplement the guidance produced. They are on our website, but in the guide, which is also on our website, and I'll give you the link to that in a bit, there are summaries of those case studies in there, and the longer case studies are on the Wild Oxfordshire website, and also to hold events to celebrate the project and introduce the guidance, of which this is one of the events. So this is a brief walk through the guide. It is a summary document, and it's also a signposting document. So it does give detail, but it's signposts to where you can find more detail, and it doesn't obviously contain everything, unfortunately, because it would be a very long document. And it is a snapshot of the current information that we hold, and some of that information will become out of date fairly quickly. We have online, we have links, and we will endeavour to update any links which we can. We've mainly added in homepages of websites, because obviously if you add in other pages that are more specific, they're more likely to break, and then that makes it harder to maintain. It is set in Oxfordshire, although the context is Oxfordshire and the case studies Oxfordshire, although it's relevant beyond Oxfordshire and other counties too. And this is the link on the Wild Oxfordshire website, and we can also send that round afterwards. And on that page on the website, there's the guidance, and there's the case studies, there's other case studies, and there's a load of other useful information, some of which I will cover a bit later on in my talk, about setting up community groups, helpful information for parish councils and community groups. Rachel, I think you offered to cover the next two slides.
I know, I know that we've got some kind of parish and town councillors watching this recording, so I thought I'd include this small section just on the biodiversity duty for them, and also any community groups that might be working with your parish and town councils or plan to do so. So under the Environment Act, public authorities, so that's all the way from county through to district, town and parish councils, have to be, from January this year, have to consider what they can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity within their kind of locality. So yeah, everyone's got to do it. It's a kind of statutory element of being a public authority now. And town and parish councils must consider what they can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity in their area, agree policies and objectives based on this consideration, and then act to deliver these policies and objectives. Next slide, Imogen, please.
Yeah, sorry, I have control, don't I? I forgot about that.
Thanks. So yes, all of these public authorities have to consider action to take for biodiversity. They don't have to report their actions, town and parish councils, in the same way that the districts and the county do, but they do have to kind of have regard. So some suggestions for taking this biodiversity action, having it as a standing agenda item for your kind of meetings. Kind of note any current and future actions that you're doing, and think about how you can build on them. Are there any green spaces that you own that you can be enhancing? Any community groups you could be connecting with, schools, things that Imogen's very much going to touch on in a bit. And indeed, can you integrate it into your neighbourhood plans, a process that I know a lot of town and parish councils are starting to think about doing. Can really form a key part of this as well. And there's other things you can do, putting on events around this, doing things like bioblitzes, community wildlife supporting, community wildlife surveying. So yeah, getting a bit of a picture of your local area, as Imogen is going to go on to now. Thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, so the guide that I've mentioned here, the hard copy I've got here, the way we've laid it out is we have set it out within over 4 steps, 4 main steps. So discover what's in your area, protect the most valuable areas, create new habitat for wildlife, and manage areas to maintain and enhance biodiversity. And the first section, discover. I've just taken various sections just to introduce to you just briefly on this this presentation, but once you actually go into the guide, you'll see that obviously there's additional information in there. So here there is a checklist that that we have, which people, hopefully communities, parish, town councils will find helpful. This also, we had input from Rhiannon Young, who works on the Wild Kidlington project. She's the project officer. And it's really around what information do you already have, and what extra information can you gather? Find out the opportunities that you have to enhance, connect, extend, and what other groups do you have in your area? You could have a neighbouring group that you could work with. What expertise is there? What help can you utilize? What surveys do you have? Do you have access to? Are there current surveys? What management is already being carried out on your green spaces and the valuable habitat? What connections can you make with people? Yeah, as I've said, are there any local experts? Do you have a base of volunteers? Can you attract a base of volunteers? These are all questions to think about to help you get started. And there's a whole wealth of information online to help you gather your information. And in the guide, in the Discover section, we have listed quite a lot of that information here, from maps to organisations that have really helpful resources online, including historic environment as well, and surveys when you're thinking about surveys. And towards the back of the guide, we have a table of useful links as well, which is well worth having a look at to help you get started. Again, as I said earlier, it's not exhaustive. It doesn't contain everything. So there may be the person that thinks, oh, why haven't you included that? Yeah, I've already had a comment about that, but yeah, unfortunately we've not been able to include everything, but we also have the directory on the Wild Oxfordshire website, which lists a lot of groups and organisations as well, which people will find helpful. And let us know if you've got any other information you'd like us to add, because as you can imagine, with a list like that, it does need updating every now and then. So yeah, please do get in touch if you think that we've not included something that we should be including. Okay, so this is just to continue on the fact finding and getting to know your local patch. Here is just an example that I've taken from the guide. It's literally a hand-drawn map. You could use a paper copy of a map and then go out and annotate it. I often find that the best way. That's what I do when I go out and I survey areas, and I'm getting to understand the value of the different habitats, what species I might expect to find there, what the opportunities are. But other people might have other ways of doing things. There's not a right or a wrong, obviously. But what is important, I put here, is ground truthing. So whatever information that you've collated before you start making your plans, when you go out, it's really important to check that information is correct and still current. So that's just one thing I must emphasize there. So this is all around adding to the information you already have, and thinking about an action plan and your priorities. You can have your quick wins and your short and longer term plans. Obviously, the longer term plans are going to need a bit more preparation and probably possibly bringing in more people. And it's just worth scoping that out, and it's a really useful thing to do. And when you've got that information, you probably want to have that electronically. You may want to actually map using GIS software. There's free online GIS software that you could use. You may choose to actually map that information, but that's up to people. people have their ways that they want to do things, and you can't do everything all at once. So with the best intentions, sometimes these things take time, don't they? So let's go on to the next bit. So we're on to protect. So I'm probably saying a lot of things that people already know about, I'm sure. But finding out about the designated sites, local, national designated sites in your area, including geological, nature reserves, which could, of course, be designated or not. Valuable habitats, of course, there's going to be a lot of areas that are not actually designated or protected, but they're still valuable. There's information in the guide on how to propose a local wildlife site. The TVERC website is very useful, and they have a lot more information on that side of things. And think about appropriate plans, as I've said, for connecting, extending, rejuvenating, restoring, and what you may have in your area in terms of protected, rare, notable species, and recording, carrying out surveys and recording. There's really useful apps now you can have on your phone, or you can use on a website. So iRecord, but I also use iNaturalist, or you could submit records via TVERC, and also data searches from using TVERC for data searches. It's best to look at their information on their website with regards to charging, because what they charge will differ depending on what you need that information for. If it's just a small data search and that information is to be used for conservation plans, there may be a small fee, or they may ask for a donation, but something that's going to take a lot of time to gather. Obviously, there may be a charge for that. So always check the website when thinking about undertaking that. So creation of wildlife habitats. I mean, in reality, a lot of the habitats are already going to be there, and it's going to be a case of thinking about, as I've said, restoration or rejuvenation, connection, and extending. So in the guide, we have a short summary of some of the key habitats that you will be probably familiar with, or fairly familiar with. They're not all the habitats that you're going to find, but we haven't put all of those. So we put some of the key habitats with some of the key online resources. The Wild Oxfordshire website has a good resources library that you can find, which has more information on there. And as mentioned in the guide as well, there's lots of different websites with resources, and as I've touched on, the information in the back of the guide, useful websites. So yeah, again, lots of information out there that you can utilize. And I've put here, we can learn from each other, and there's case studies, lots of case studies out there. I will touch on that a bit later, but the guide does have some case studies in there for you to look at for inspiration. But other websites have case studies too. I believe West Oxfordshire District Council has case studies, Rachel, on there that people can look at as well. Rachel's nodding. So yeah, learn from each other. What have other people done already? Managing spaces for nature and communities. Some of this I've already said. Thinking about longer term plans, management plans. Don't always need a long management plan. A shorter management statement might be sufficient. But it's often useful to have something that people can refer to, especially when you've got a few people involved in the management, and volunteers as well. It's useful to have something in place. I've mentioned monitoring and citizen science and engaging the wider community. One of the ways to do that is events. holding events outside, maybe even with a local school. It's just some of the ideas to help engage the community. I'm sure some of you are already involved in that side of things. And I've already touched on recording and citizen science previously. Okay, so this is what I mentioned before, the Wild Oxfordshire website. I think I gave the link earlier. There's useful resources on there for those that are interested in setting up a community group, local environment community group. There's information about the key steps, and yeah, there's some more detailed information that you can download to find out more. I've just listed some of the key steps here, but as I say, if you go to the website, you can find out more about that. Also setting up a constitution and that side of things, but I'm not going to go into too much detail on this presentation. So community nature recovery projects. It's just some nice photos that I've collected here. So as I mentioned, as part of the wider project, there are 3 case studies, 3 parish councils involved, Astle, Ensham, and Filkins and Broughton Pogs. I think some of you will be aware that Ensham, they have their nature recovery network there, which is a large group of volunteers and local experts and, you know, ecologists, and just they've got a big group there, and it's not like a sort of traditional community group in the way that you have a chair and you know, you have various different levels. They have something slightly different that they say is more of a sort of a flat hierarchy. But if you want to find out more, go to their website. There's a lot of useful information there, and again, inspirational stories about what they're doing, you know, with the wider work that they do. But one of the case studies was a smaller aspect of the work that they're doing in Ensham, so I'll touch on that in a bit. Astle, so there's a small village, as part of Astle Parish Council, Astle Lee, and a disused allotment site there, which people hadn't, it was becoming inaccessible. People hadn't really used it as an allotment for many years, so I'll go into that in a bit more detail. And Filkins and Broughton Pogs. So Filkins, very interesting village actually, never been before this project, near Lechlade. And in a way, I suppose you could describe that as more of a sort of urban setting, even though it's the wider environment is more rural. But it's in a central area in the community, right next to the community shop, community play area, allotments. And I'll go into the detail in a little while into that one. There seemed to be an overarching theme with all these case studies that was providing habitat for pollinators, which was quite interesting, which is why I've got a picture here, managed for pollinators and some wildflowers. Okay, so Astle Parish Council. I've got just a few photos here. There were many photos that I could have chosen from, but the one that you're seeing with the rail, that's how it was before the work was started. So this is the pretty much disused allotment site, which already, you know, has had value for wildlife, but they wanted to do something that made it more of a community area so people could access it again, and appreciate it and open it up a bit. And it's a lovely view from the top. You can look right down into a valley and you can see the neighbouring countryside, a valley, some woodland, and it's hoped that people will stop there and actually appreciate the view and the wildlife, perhaps when they're going on their walks. And you'll see a hedgerow they put in here, and some of the areas that they cleared, and they're retaining some of the aspects of the old allotment site, including some raspberry bushes, because they will provide berries and pollen and nectar for pollinators. There's quite a lot of scrub on site, which is really beneficial, and some more mature trees. And I have put in a photo of a primrose here, because it's one of the lovely things that I saw on this site. Is there's quite a lot of primroses. In fact, there's quite a lot of primroses all around the village. And yeah, they're just there. So which obviously they've left them, and I just think that's a lovely aspect of the site there. And they've put up an owl box and some back boxes. And they've started to create a dead hedge. They describe it as a patchwork of habitats, which I think is a lovely description. In a fairly small area, they're managing to do a lot. And there's also a natural water source on site. And they're going to create some smaller, wetter areas, boggy areas, and some smaller ponds, which is a great idea too. And yeah, there were quite a lot of people involved in this project, Owl Project, the Barn Owl Project, the local community group there, I think it's called Beagles, and also Witchwood Forest Trust, who will give them some advice about managing the hedgerow when it's a bit more grown. So yeah, they've pulled in the local advice. And they're going to come up with a short management plan for the site. Yeah, it's a great project. I'm just looking at my notes if there's anything else just to let you know about. Yeah, they had volunteer help, so a team of volunteers and also a contractor who came and did some work that was a bit too heavy duty for the volunteers. Yeah, if you want to find out more, case study on the website, and also the summary case study in the guide. And I will go on to the next one. This is the summary case study in the guide. So this is Ensham. As I've touched on, they already have they already have a group already established in the parish, and actually wider than the parish, with neighbouring parish councils. This is the Nature Recovery Network, and they have their Longmead barn, and the Longmead Biodiversity Research Project, and the Thames Valley Wildflower Meadow Restoration Project. So there's already a lot going on there. And several years back, some community areas were restored as meadows, with some wildflower planting. And for the case study, they decided to do some further planting to further enhance some of these community areas, yellow rattle, and also for spring pollen and nectar, some snake's head fritillaries. Yeah, so we have a photo here. This is one of the they called it a plantathon, planting out wildflowers at one of the community meadow areas. Already a lot of people involved. Yeah, very very enjoyable. And picture of some of the snake's head fritillaries, which they planted out on various sites there. And as I said, there's a lot going on. So yeah, look at their website. Lots of information there about how they're bringing in the experts. I didn't mention about their plant propagation group. So they propagate wildflowers at Longmead Barn. And they work with local schools. They do care farming. They work with the local beavers. Yeah, they're doing a lot already. They have good relationships with local farmers, and yeah, as I said, care farming, working with people with learning disabilities. So lots going on there. And Filkins, Platinum Jubilee Garden, that's the name of their project. Now, they already had plans to create a garden, which they decided to call Platinum Jubilee Garden, as you can imagine, after the Platinum Jubilee. But having talked to them, they wanted to bring in a wildlife element too, a wildlife gardening element. You can't really see the plan here that I've got this presentation, but they drew up a design to encompass some wildlife habitats and planting for wildlife, as well as a more sort of traditional community gardening sort of features here. There is some hogging, sort of, as you would say, I suppose, sort of more traditionally sort of hard landscaped areas for seating. And what they decided to do is sow lawn with wildflowers in there. And I'm hoping that the wildflowers will actually increase, and also they have plans to collect seeds and propagate their own wildflowers and plant as plugs in the garden area. And they've planted a bird cherry and Guelder rose, and they've got some beach screening, also beach for screening and also for wildlife there. And they have various plans to create more habitats, bug hotels, rough habitat, habitat piles, put trellis up with creeping plants, climbers such as honeysuckle. They are in talks with local groups, with the local nursery about doing some work with them, because it's so small they can fit all the children in the seated areas, which I think is lovely. And they're even thinking about what else they can do in the village to take into account the wildlife and extend and connect, as we were talking about earlier. So that's lovely. It's got them thinking about what else they can do. Yeah. So the one thing I will say about this, it was very clear that volunteers were key for all of these case study projects, and having a volunteer base is really useful, but it's also hard work for volunteers, and that was one of the things that all of the case study leads said, that it's something that it's a great thing to have, but it's also quite hard work. Some of the aspects that they were carrying out. Oh, so yeah, back over to Rachel, little bit on LNRS.
Oh yeah, just to expand on your point there, it's, yeah, as you say, it's not just the the exciting bit, the kind of planting the trees, digging the ponds, planting the flowers. It's the long-term management of the sites that are really, really important when thinking about setting up these groups, creating these habitats. So often, it is the case where people go out and excitedly do all these things that look really good when you start, and then a few years down the line, the management plan that you've maybe put together has been abandoned slightly. Maybe your volunteer base has fallen off a little bit, so you haven't got that capacity to manage those new habitats. So planning, accounting for that, making sure you're keeping your volunteers engaged is all really, really important. And yeah, planning for those, eventualities. Is it, climate change? There might well be years where you have lots of rain, lots of drought, and yeah, just kind of factoring that into your kind of long-term management is really important. Cool. I thought I'd just touch briefly on the local nature recovery strategy. So this is a kind of county-wide, well, the Oxfordshire one is a county-wide, but it's a national kind of initiative where the UK government is hoping to create a network of network across all of the different counties where we are prioritising locations for nature's recovery. So yeah, spatial strategy that are going to get priorities and outputs for each county that will link up to form a lovely kind of green network across the country is the hope. And not only will we hopefully see nature recovery as a result of that, but there'll be a whole host of kind of wider environmental benefits such as carbon mitigation, flood mitigation, air quality benefits. So Oxfordshire County Council is leading on this in our county with input from lots of different stakeholders. We Wild Oxfordshire are very involved in kind of the different steering groups, but other names like BBOUT, the local authorities, lots of people are getting involved in working this up, the different the national landscapes, for example. Um, and most recently there was a public consultation held on the kind of first, what do people want to see in our local Oxfordshire nature recovery strategy, looking at people's different priorities and outputs. That consultation closed a couple of weeks ago now, but they've just announced today that there is going to be a webinar kind of looking at the results of that and kind of next steps going forward. So on our kind of follow up from this event, we will send that link out if you would like to take a look at that, because it's going to be really important that we're all kind of clued up for the next stage of consultation, which is going to be in kind of summer sort of time, where OCC are going to have drawn up a map, a nature recovery network with these different priorities and outputs, and they're going to want as many people, like yourselves, to look at this as possible, look at any areas that maybe they've missed, any priorities they feel like have been considered properly. That's all going to happen in the summertime. So yeah, it would be really good if keen groups and individuals such as yourselves would be able to get involved with that. Great.
Okay. I will move on to the next slide. Now, this is something that a few people have asked about. Wild About Benson event. I don't know if any of you would have heard about it. Some of you may have even come to it. So this is an event that was held in March, was organised by Benson Area Nature Group, which is Benson and some of the surrounding villages, and a committee of members worked on this for several months to hold this event. There's funding from various sources, and we had, I say we because this is also Wild Oxfordshire attended. So I had two hats, Wild Oxfordshire, but also my local nature group as well. So there were people from the nature group who had their own displays of the different projects ongoing in the Benson area. But also there were external exhibitors that came in, such as Oxfordshire Ornithological Society, Thames Valley, Upper Thames Butterfly Conservation, and a whole host of other organisations that came. It was well received. There were activities for children. There were, on the evening, there was a reception and there was a couple of speakers. And there was a nature photography competition. What else was there that I can tell you about? So essentially, it was to highlight the local nature in the area, and hopefully an inspiring event for all that attended. But the reason why I've added this in here is just to showcase the kind of thing that people might want to hold in their area or might be interested in. So I've got a short video, quite a bit of it. There's bird song. So don't be alarmed if you just hear bird song and you don't hear anyone talking. A bit later on in the video, you can hear some talking, and it's just under 3 minutes long. So yeah, I'll just play that now.
Welcome to Wild About Benson. My name's Edel McGurk. I'm the chair of Benson Area Nature Group, and my job tonight is fairly simple, actually. I'm going to just set a bit of the scene for you tonight before introducing Dr. William Bird. Our speaker tonight is standing here in front of me.
So it's a real pleasure, and I think a massive congratulations. So we'll talk about a little bit more about how important this is and how unique this is.
I'm here with Kerry Graves to talk about the Benson and UL project. So, hello, Kerry. So, how long's the project been going?
So, I think we first started talking about this around 4 years ago, and it was initiated really by Benson Nature Group. They'd already been speaking to the 2 parish councils, and then they came to us to ask for some advice to pull together a restoration plan for the whole book.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. If you fancy watching the longer video, it is on YouTube. And if you search for Benson Nature Group, it should come up, or Wild About Benson. But I did search for Benson Nature Group and it came up. I found it fine. So yeah, hopefully you should be able to find that if you want to watch the full video, which I think is about half an hour. Yeah, so I think if I go escape, yeah, then I can go to the next slide. Oh, it plays it again. Ah, right, here we are. Right, I think that marks the end of me talking, presentation talking, and we're on to any questions, or you may wish to share something that you're doing for nature in your local area, project that you're particularly proud of. So Rachel, I haven't actually looked at the chat to see the questions. I don't know if I have a look now.
We haven't got any questions so far, but you should be able to either kind of unmute yourself or put questions in the chat that we can then, I can see that Hugh Ashton has raised his hand. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, Hugh, if you can, hopefully.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Very, very interesting explanation. And I was not knowing quite what I was going to be listening to, but I'm pretty inspired by it.
Brilliant.
Just a couple of questions. Are there hard copies available of the Community Nature Recovery Guide? Is that possible, or do we just need to download them? I know we're trying to paper.
Sorry, you went a bit crackly there, but we do have hard copies available, yes. If you drop me an email, I'll be able to post you one if you give me your address, and we'd be happy to share that with yourselves. Yeah, we do have a stash of hard ones. Generally, the hard ones are good, but they don't have all the links that the website one has. So it's good to kind of have as a nice reference for people. But yeah, it's one limitation of it.
And would you be able to share a copy of the slides with us?
Yep, that should be absolutely fine. Yes. What I'll do after the event finishes tomorrow, we'll share the slides and the recording for those who couldn't come along, and yeah, send links to things like the LNRS and yes, and the Wild About Benson stuff as well, and the new case studies that we've put on our website as well.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. I can see a question in the chat. Could you say a word or two, please, about Nature Recovery Network led by CAG Oxfordshire, which is starting to find a nature-based strategy for your parish? Thanks. It's Harriet from Banbury Wild. Do you have any information on that, Imogen, at all? Is that
about the Nature Recovery Network led by CAG, which is starting to define nature-based strategy from your parish? That is not something I'm that familiar with. We can find out more about that if that would be helpful, and include that in the email that we send round.
Is that the work that Marcus Simmons is doing, Harriet? You can unmute yourself or respond in the chat. I know that Marcus Simmons has been doing a lot. Yes, Marcus, indeed. So yes, he's been talking to a lot of town and parish councils, and yeah, starting to help them in kind of getting these kind of nature-based strategies for their areas. So using things like the Land app to map out areas. It ties in very nicely with the kind of the guidance and the links that we've been provided or we've provided in the document. And yes, Marcus and I think CAG Oxfordshire are a really useful resource for town and parish councils as well. Kind of beyond the guide, as very, very helpful people to speak to. So we can provide their details as well if you would like.
Yeah, there was a slide where I did mention CAG. I don't think I verbally mentioned it, but it was on the slide because they have lots of really useful resources as well. So it is worth looking at their website for those. Okay.
Any other questions at all?
Or if anyone just wants to share something that they're doing, or they think is inspiring, or they're proud of, we'd love to hear.
Absolutely. All right. If there's no more questions, then we will wrap that up. Thank you all so much for attending this evening. Lovely to have you here. As I said, I'll be following up shortly with an email. I'm glad you found it useful. And yeah, do get in touch with us if you've got any questions following on from the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.